Over the past year and a half, I've released 20 game review videos covering titles comprised of 22 different genres, developed in 9 different countries and spanning 30 years of release dates. It's been a real blast, but one aspect of my videos I've been really frustrated with is the recommendation aspect. I found myself saying things like, I tentatively recommend Garage Bad Dream Adventure for those who like the genre and aren't offended by dickfish. What does that mean? Is Garage better than Bad Mojo? They're both 90s adventure games. You see what I mean? With this in mind, I took some time and came up with a system with the goal of objectively portraying my entirely subjective opinions. This is how I figured out I should calculate my scores. Each of these categories is broken up into subcategories behind the scenes, compiling to an overall grade, which then lands the game into one of my 6 tiers. Do not recommend at the bottom, to recommended for anyone at the top, the idea being that most games would land somewhere in the middle, like a bell curve. So now that I have a system, I wanted to go back and score the 20 games I've already covered for the channel to give some context to future reviews and more weight to my feedback. My name is Harvey Bodega, and let's rank these games. To start, I'll begin in 20th place with the tier I call I Do Not Recommend. I don't plan on seeking out games that I know I won't like very often, so it's unlikely there will be very many in this category, and as of now, there's only one. In 20th scores Hinterland. Hinterland is the 2008 real-time strategy, RPG-lite, roguelite colony simulator of the now-defunct Tilted Mill Entertainment. While I didn't hate my time with it, the reason it's down here is that Hinterland is a frustrating level of generic, underwhelming, and incomplete. These are mostly genres that I really like too. I am your intended audience, and the combination of these mechanics could hypothetically be fantastic, but man, is this game muddled and just not very good, almost feeling amateurish at parts. Obviously, I don't recommend Hinterland, and it placed in 20th. Next, we get into the ranking tier I call Only Recommended for the Deeply Interested, meaning unless you're incredibly fascinated by one or multiple aspects of these games and willing to overlook a lot of issues, I don't recommend it. On 19th, I have Monster's Den Godfall, developed by Monstrum Games and released in 2017. Unfortunately, this sequel to the Book of Dread, which I really liked, muddles what I enjoyed and adds a bunch of stuff that doesn't do anything for me. In putting together that review video, I was surprised by how passionate I was about an underwhelming full-release sequel to a 2008 Flash game. I like indie games and always root for underdog indie developers, and Monstrum really deserves a lot of credit for creating a Flash game I like as much as I do, but Godfall really falls flat in every other aspect besides what made Book of Dread great. Unless you're a Monster's Den or indie dungeon crawler superfan, I can't recommend it. So in 19th, Monster's Den Godfall. 18th is Thrill Kill, the 3D fighting game developed by Paradox Development, meant to be released in 1998. This title is notorious for 2 things: obtaining the first adults-only rating for violence rather than sexual content, and having such gratuitous violence that Electronic Arts, who purchased Thrill Kill's publisher, cancelled it at like 99% completion. As for the game itself, available as a leaked ROM, I found it's much more interesting to learn about than actually play. I can only recommend it to emulators who want to explore the subject matter that was so controversial at the time, but pretty darn underwhelming today. Thrill Kill's score lands it in 18th place. On to 17th, where we find The Amazon Trail, the educational adventure successor to the hugely popular Oregon Trail franchise developed by the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium and released on DOS in 1993. Sure, it's got some charm, but it's a canoe crashing simulator. You'll be steering down a river, hit a smear of brown pixels, and just die. Does that make Amazon Trail a roguelike? Anyway, although greatly improved in the Windows release, the visuals in the original DOS version stank, its gameplay is mostly tedious and very punishing, and your payoffs for making it past a difficult section of river are random facts about the Amazon and chatting with Theodore Roosevelt. I can just do that in character.ai. He's got some ideas too. Anyway, besides nostalgia or a serious curiosity, it's entirely passable. So in 17th, The Amazon Trail. This spills us into our next tier up, which are titles only recommended for niche audiences. If you're not a member of the small minority that these games appeal to, then I can't recommend them. In 16th, we have Chex Quest HD, the HD remake of the boomer shooter Doom clone released in cereal boxes back in 1996. The fact that the original developer created this love letter to fans of the original Chex Quest is a real triumph, a testament to the community that kept this retro product placement shooter alive. That said, to anyone other than fans of the original Chex Quest, the HD remake is unlikely to be anything more than an incredibly slow-paced boomer shooter. Unless you were a fan of the original or just like free games, I can't recommend it, but it does have some charm. In 16th, Chex Quest HD. On to our 15th spot, where Bad Mojo ended up, the adventure game developed by Pulse Entertainment and released in 1996. This is a classic example of a 90s adventure game, but without bizarre moon logic, the adventure game purgatory, or dying randomly. Sure, controlling your cockroach is wonky, FMV cutscenes are ridiculous, and the setting is disgusting, but hey, those are things that plenty of people enjoy. I mean, I hate cockroaches, but I do like this game. There's a lot of great visuals for the time, campy goofiness, and a creative idea, but since it's not for the squeamish and unlikely to appeal to those who don't enjoy this specific genre and time in gaming history, Bad Mojo's score lands it in 15th. On to 14th, Impossible Creatures. This 2003 RTS developed by Relic Entertainment allows you to create your own roster of animal hybrids to invade your enemies. An absolutely winning premise and is what carries much of what makes this game a cult classic. Relic is pretty much the real-time strategy experts, having also developed Homeworld, the Warhammer 40k Dawn of War series, and the Company of Heroes series. The downside, besides the terrible pathfinding, is that there isn't much strategic depth. You can spend hours crafting your perfect army of atrocities, but none of the units counter each other or pose that much of a strategic advantage. There are just some better than others. Because there are better RTS games mechanically both before and after its 2003 release, many of which from Relic's own catalog, I can only recommend this to the nostalgic or real-time strategy superfans. Impossible Creatures earned 14th place. Here at 13th lands Placid Plastic Duck Simulator, 2022's charming little idler collectathon, where the main aspect of gameplay is time. It may feel offensive that an idler game is higher than the previously mentioned titles like Impossible Creatures. I totally get that sentiment, but it's surprisingly effective. I said in my review video, besides
Joe Banks,
that I went from thinking that these weren't games at all to thinking I played one of the best of the genre. Turbolento Games absolutely nailed what they were setting out to do, and that's reflected in how many people love
the Ducks.
It's been covered by mainstream game journalists. Now there's DLC, other maps. I mean, I reviewed this title when I had like 900 Steam reviews. I really do love to see its success. It's also a video I had a ton of fun making, too. That said, understandably, many aren't interested in idler games, no matter how cheerful they are, even if the developer excelled in what they were setting out to do. So at 13th, Placid Plastic Duck Simulator. So on to our biggest tier on the list, 6 games that I can definitely recommend to fans of their respective genres, or others who find something about these games highly captivating. They're solid games. So first on this tier, in 12th, is Mundaun. Mundaun? I still don't know the pronunciation exactly, but the hand-drawn, atmospheric horror game developed by Hidden Fields as a love letter to Swiss culture and folklore. There are very few games with similar presentation or a similar setting, and it feels like playing a dark fairy tale as you traverse mountain passes guided by a sentient, severed goat's head. There's some solid atmosphere and a fascinating plot, but I found the gameplay to be slow and progression confusing or frustrating at parts. This slow-paced psychological experience does not need a lengthy first-person shooting section in my opinion, but I digress. It's a solid recommend for a unique experience, especially for indie horror fans. Mundaun earns 12th place. 11th is Zoombinis, the remake of the 1996 beloved educational puzzle game developed by TERC and released in 2015. Take your little Smurf-adjacent creatures through the wilderness full of dangers and whimsical challenges to lead them to their promised land. Zoombeanieville. Sure, it's an educational game, and yes, it's meant to appeal to younger audiences, and yes, nostalgia is clouding much of my judgment here, but I feel it's a perfect match for this tier of games. If you like educational puzzle-type games and/or you have children, I can't imagine much of a better choice. In wanting this system to be accommodating for games like Zoombinis, plus, this is a nostalgic favorite for me. I spent way too long in my review breaking down every single puzzle. I think it's mostly great, with some tedium, so recommended to fans of the genre. Zoombinis takes 11th place. So you may be thinking that my last choice was overly painted by my own nostalgia, but I don't agree. That's because this one is definitely overpainted by my own nostalgia. In 10th is Blades of Exile, the open-world RPG developed by Spiderweb Software and released in 1997. Basically, I don't know anyone who played this game other than myself and my siblings, but the mechanical depth, character skill customization, and open-ended possibilities of the world blew my mind. A lot of people probably experienced the open-world RPG with Daggerfall or other AAA titles, but an indie game made mostly by like 2 people aiming for similar levels of role-playing is really something special. Sure, it looks rudimentary as hell, even at the time, and in my video I made the mistake of saying it works on Windows 10 when it only works out of the download box on Windows 8, but I think RPG fans would like this little gem quite a bit. Blades of Exile lands in 10th place. Onward to 9th place, earned by Typing of the Dead Overkill, the 2013 typing adaptation of the 2009 light gun shooter House of the Dead Overkill, developed by Modern Dream. I don't like typing games very much, nor light gun or rail shooters, and I'm pretty burnt out on zombies, but Typing of the Dead Overkill is great. I think transferring light gun mechanics to typing is pretty genius. Rail and light gun shooters played with the mouse are way too easy, and light gun adapters are expensive. Typing makes the title challenging on PC without requiring the purchase of an adapter and maintains the intended frantic tone. Plus, I got better at typing. While aspects of the presentation are weak and it's pretty gross, the plot and characters are hilarious and it's a good time. If you like rail or light gun shooters, or are one of the few that enjoy typing games, or just want a goofy, lighthearted romp, it's a solid recommend. So in 9th, Typing of the Dead Overkill. Now the 8th entry is Forgive Me Father, the indie Lovecraftian graphic novel-styled boomer shooter developed by Byte Barrel and released in 2021. This is one of the games I've covered where I really think my review needed clarifying. If you were to watch my Chex Quest HD and Forgive Me Father videos back-to-back, both covering indie boomer shooters, it's not entirely clear as to which one I enjoy or recommend more, when the answer to both is by far and away Forgive Me Father. Sure, the voice acting stinks, there's a lull in the middle, and the story is a footnote, but the gameplay is fun, challenging, and satisfying. I'm thrilled they're making a sequel. I hope they innovate further, and if you like boomer shooters or just first-person shooters in general, I can absolutely recommend this title. So, in 8th, Forgive Me Father. On to 7th, where we find Garage Bad Dream Adventure, the surrealist adventure game originally developed by Kinotrope, released in 1999, re-released on mobile devices in 2021, then on Steam in 2022. While the gameplay is rudimentary, there's some tedium and unexpectedly dark subject matter, this game has just stuck with me. With the H.R. Giger-esque biomechanical characters and of course the dickfish, the visuals are the most striking aspect of Garage and probably responsible for why it was sought out so diligently by an online community prior to its re-release. It's really effective, but I really like how it's applied in developing its setting. Man, I think about Garage's setting a lot. The creepy, decaying, mechanized Japanese fishing village built over brackish, stagnant water, along with the bizarre and uncanny soundtrack. It's fantastic. I've never seen anything like it, and I can confidently recommend it to adventure game fans with a content warning. Garage Bad Dream Adventure takes 7th place. This now bumps us to our next and second highest tier. These are good games and are highly recommended for those who enjoy these genres or anyone else who finds them interesting. Let's kick this off with 6th place, This Bed We Made, the character-driven investigation game developed by Low Birth Games and released in 2023. I really enjoy deep dives into character-driven stories following normal people, especially in specific, lesser-utilized settings. This short, intimate tale with an awesome Choices Matter gameplay story tie and solid replayability does have some contrived elements and some visual shortcomings, although they've since patched some of what I pointed out in my video. That said, I can recommend it to investigation game fans or anyone who is intrigued by the premise. So 6th place is This Bed We Made. 5th is Cultist Simulator, the Lovecraftian role-playing card game developed by Weather Factory and released in 2018. The concept of this game is really something special, combining cards in specific ways to advance your character towards esoteric and bizarre goals. The mechanics and concept of this game result in truly one of the best simulations of delving into the forbidden unknown I've ever seen. And as a card game, the extent of what you can do, the writing, and the satisfaction of discovery is unique and excellent, although restarting from the beginning to try and get a different ending is pretty repetitive once you know what you're doing. That said, I can recommend this title to fans of Lovecraftian games, card games, or just indie game fans in general. In 5th sits Cultist Simulator. On to our 4th entry, Northgard, developed by Shiro Games and released in 2018, likely the most well-known title I've covered on the channel so far. This creative combination of real-time strategy, colony sim, and 4X gameplay result in a really mechanically well-done experience with a high skill ceiling. The PvP, PvE, or PvC game modes are all really fun, and the strengths and weaknesses of each clan you play provide great variety. Shortcomings include a lackluster story campaign, and the DLC for more clans is overpriced to me, but Northgard is an easy recommend for those real-time strategy, 4X, or colony sim fans. Northgard takes 4th. 3rd is Paradise Killer, the open-world vaporwave investigation game developed by Kaizen Gameworks and released in 2020. This game has the vibes. The atmosphere, the lore, the world, the characters, the mystery. They clearly had a vision. Plus, the highly stylized presentation has a lore explanation. It's a virtualized paradise, and it's really fitting. I liked it so much that I hope Kaizen's next game is a sequel set in the same universe, just delving further into the world, the characters, and the gameplay. My main critiques are things like more poses and voice lines for characters and a better map, but if those are my main issues, I think it's clear that it's a damn fun game. I recommend this title to most anyone, but especially those who like investigation titles, or visual novels, or vaporwave. Third place is Paradise Killer. So we're on to number 2, earned by Rollerdrome, the third-person arena roller skating shooter developed by Roll7 and released in 2022. This was a real pleasant surprise for me. The art style is baller, the plot, although scarce, is interesting, and the gameplay as difficult as it can be without being frustrating, making beating a level satisfying as hell. I feel like Rollerdrome's gameplay is a perfect melding of style and substance. You've got the shoosting and the flipping, both amplifying each other, all in this badass cel-shaded retro-futuristic 1980s aesthetic. To any shooter fans, but also anyone who likes stylish, flashy combat, or Jet Set Radio, or Tony Hawk games, it's an easy recommend. In second is Rollerdrome. Finally, we come to our highest tier. Games I'd recommend to anyone, reserved for all-around great games. There will be very few titles falling into this category. I want it to be reserved for games that are not only excellently done, but I thoroughly enjoyed myself. For now, there is only one, our number 1 game. Without further ado, in first is Return of the Obra Dinn, the 2018 nautical puzzle investigation adventure developed entirely by Lucas Pope. I feel that the premise, the gameplay story tie, the 1-bit art style, and the music, holy cow, the music, are just fantastic. It's a shame because my video covering it, I'm really not a huge fan of because I found it to be a hard game to cover. Almost every piece of gameplay you show is more or less a spoiler since it's tied to the plot so effectively, and the biggest weakness of Obra Dinn I can think of is that it has very low replayability. Both investigation and puzzle games are almost impossible to have effective replays because you already know the result of the investigation or the solution to the puzzle. I just want more of it, damn it! No sequel? No replayability? How do I get anything like this again? It's a game I have to plan on revisiting when I find my memory of its intricacies not being as sharp, as then I'll be able to partially experience the brilliance of a first-time playthrough another time. Though it's not the only title on this list I've given as a gift, I'm so confident in its quality that I'm very comfortable saying that almost anyone will find value in playing it. So at number 1, Return of the Obra Dinn. So there it is, there's the list. I'm sure many of you disagreed with some assessments within this video, but this is the context we'll have going forward, allowing us to further flesh out the recommendations I have in subsequent games I cover. You know, I really like making these videos. It's something I enjoy as personal expression, but I'm also honored that anyone would take the time to watch them, whether a video has 20 views or 2,000 views. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of what I've covered so far, and I feel that having this system will allow me to better represent how I feel about games going forward. Plus, a goal in following videos is to show a little bit more of my personality, be more blatant with my opinions, and pull away from anything that feels derivative or ingenuine. I'm always open to feedback, and for anyone that watches at any point, thank you for coming. My name is Harvey Bodega, and I hope to see you around. Thanks a lot.
Hello.